Welcome to this deep dive, all about happiness.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're going to be diving into this really unique interactive discussion.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of framed as a conversation with a wise grandfather figure.
I like that.
Yeah. And what's really cool is that as a reader, you get to choose your own adventure.
Oh, interesting.
So you pick different options as you read.
Okay.
Which makes it feel super personalized.
That's great.
And it's not about like finding the one right answer.
Right.
But really just like diving into all the nuances and complexities of happiness and its sources and finding balance and how it changes over time.
I think what's so interesting about this source is it takes on like the very essence of what we all seek. Right?
Totally.
Happiness.
Yeah.
But then it presents it as this like multi-layered concept.
Yeah.
It's kind of like peeling back the layers of an onion.
Yeah.
Like the deeper you go, the more complexity is revealed.
Totally. And like right away, you're introduced to the story of Alia, who is a young girl who's asking her like wise grandfather about the nature of happiness.
Okay.
And he kind of presents her with these three archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the wealthy man who finds happiness in his possessions.
Okay.
The painter who finds it in inner fulfillment.
Yeah.
And then the farmer who finds happiness in sharing and connection.
Makes sense.
So right from the get-go,
Yeah.
you're presented with this question, like, can we really pin happiness down to a single definition?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Or is it truly a personal experience?
I mean, that's like the classic philosophical dilemma, right?
Totally.
Is it objective, meaning there's some universal standard out there, or is it subjective?
All right.
Like it varies from person to person.
Yeah.
And is it driven by external factors like, wealth or achievements?
Yeah.
Or by our internal state of mind?
Exactly. And like right away, Aaliyah, who, as I said, is just a young girl, she points out that maybe it's actually like a combination of those elements.
Oh, interesting.
It's the possessions, but also like the inner feelings.
Yeah.
And sharing with other people.
Totally.
Which I think like we can all relate to in different points in our lives.
Yeah. The emphasis probably shifts depending on where we are and what we're focused on.
Yeah, for sure.
That's where this idea of like multifaceted happiness comes in.
Mm-hmm.
This source really emphasizes that our sources of happiness and like how important they are to us can totally change over time. It's this like dynamic interplay between external factors and our internal state.
Totally. And like to really drive this home, the source brings in all these other stories about the struggles people face when trying to balance all those different aspects.
Yeah.
So for example, there's this story about a scholar who prioritizes knowledge above all else.
Mm-hmm.
He finds so much satisfaction in intellectual pursuits.
Yeah.
But he maybe misses out on those deeper family connections.
Oh, wow.
So it makes you think about like, what are the trade-offs that we're making sometimes?
It highlights that tension, doesn't it?
Totally.
Between individual fulfillment and like our social connections.
Yeah.
The scholar's story is like this reminder that even like good things, like pursuing knowledge, can lead to imbalances if we're not careful.
If we don't find that balance.
Right.
And then we have the chef, who is like so passionate about food.
Yeah. He finds so much joy in his culinary creations.
Yeah.
But he struggles to find enough time for family.
Yeah, I mean, that one really resonated with me because, I think we all have passions.
Of course.
And those can be such powerful sources of happiness. But it's like, when do they start to consume us,
Right.
Where we might neglect other sources of joy.
The source isn't saying that any one path is the right one or the wrong one. Yeah. But it's encouraging you to think about, like, what are the potential consequences of just focusing on one source of happiness at the expense of others?
Yeah.
It's calling for wisdom and conscious effort in navigating this like complex landscape of emotions.
And it uses this like beautiful analogy to describe it.
What's that?
It says happiness is like a river.
Ooh, I like that.
What does that bring to mind for you?
It makes me think of this constant flow, know? Sometimes it's turbulent, sometimes it's calm, but it's always changing.
Yeah.
The course is always subject to change.
Exactly. It's like we're not meant to just be like permanently docked at some like harbor of bliss.
Right. That's that.
We're meant to navigate the currents, embrace the ebb and flow, and find joy in that ever-changing scenery.
I love that.
And the source brings this analogy to life through a few more stories.
Okay.
One is about a poet who sees happiness as water.
Oh, wow.
it's essential. It's ever-changing.
Yeah.
Sometimes gentle, sometimes forceful.
Right.
But always nourishing.
I mean, that's a really beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
It captures that duality, right?
Yeah.
It's not always about feeling good. It's about embracing like the full spectrum of the human experience.
Yeah.
Recognizing that even difficult emotions can lead to growth.
Yeah.
And understanding.
For sure. And then there's another story about this traveler.
Okay.
Who compares happiness to a dance.
Ooh, interesting.
So it's about embracing the ups and downs, the moments of stillness, and the bursts of energy. You're not trying to like rigidly stay in one pose.
Yeah, yeah.
It's about finding flow and rhythm in the movement itself.
I love that.
So it makes you think, how can we apply that dance metaphor to our own lives?
It's an invitation to like let go of needing constant unwavering happiness and to just embrace the natural rhythms of life.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay to have moments of joy and moments of sorrow. It's about like, how do we move through both?
Yeah.
With grace and resilience.
And that brings us to this idea that life itself is an adventure.
Ooh.
It's not about reaching this like fixed destination called happiness, but about experiencing the journey with all of its twists and turns. Remember that story about the explorer who was seeking that mythical valley of happiness?
Yeah, I remember that.
What can we learn from his relentless pursuit?
Well, he spends so long searching for this ultimate paradise that he ends up realizing that happiness wasn't in some far-off place.
Right.
It was actually in the experiences and the discoveries that he made along the way.
He was so focused on the destination that he missed out on all the beauty of the journey.
It's like that saying, stop and smell the roses.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes me think about that other story about that little girl who turns her everyday life into an adventure.
Oh, that's sweet.
You know, finding joy in the simplest things. She doesn't need like extravagant vacations or expensive toys.
Right.
She's finding that joy in her imagination and in her ability to see the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Her story is like a reminder that happiness is often in our perception.
Totally.
It's not necessarily about what we have or where we go, but about how we're choosing to see and experience the world.
It's about cultivating that childlike sense of wonder.
Totally.
And finding delight in the unexpected. Speaking of the unexpected, the source also highlights that power of finding happiness in the most surprising places.
Right.
Especially during tough times.
Yeah.
Like, remember the desert traveler who, you know, he's facing this grueling journey.
Right.
But finds solace in the vastness and beauty of the night sky.
Wow.
He's totally exhausted. He's almost losing hope. But then in this moment of stillness and awe, he's just reminded of the beauty that's all around him.
Right.
And it totally shifts his perspective.
It's almost like that awe transcended his difficulties and gave him kind of a sense of hope and resilience.
It makes you wonder, what are those like seemingly insignificant moments of beauty that we might be overlooking in our own lives?
I think he shows the power of perspective.
But totally.
That even when things are tough, there's still sources of joy and wonder if we're willing to look for them.
Yeah, and there's a similar theme in that story about the explorers.
Oh, right.
Who are lost in the forest.
Yeah.
They're facing danger, uncertainty. But in the midst of all that, they form these incredible bonds.
Oh, wow.
Of friendship and support.
That's powerful.
And they learn that the real treasure isn't some material reward, but it's the connections they forged through hardship.
Their story shows the power of human connection.
Yeah.
Especially during tough times.
Exactly.
You know, it's a reminder that happiness isn't always about individual achievement, but it can be about the shared experiences, the support we receive from others.
I mean, all of these stories really point to the importance of courage and resilience and adapting to the unexpected. It's like navigating the terrain of happiness requires us to be flexible, be open to new experiences, and willing to find joy even when things don't go according to plan.
That's such an important message, especially in a world that's always telling us to like chase pleasure and avoid discomfort.
Yeah.
You know, this source is challenging us to embrace like the full human experience.
Absolutely.
And realize that even the tough emotions can be valuable teachers.
Absolutely. And it's not just about overcoming the challenges, but it's also about savoring those small joys.
Right.
Especially when life is hectic and busy, the source talks about the importance of noticing and appreciating those little happinesses that sustain us.
Yeah.
Remember the fisherman?
Oh, yeah.
He finds contentment not in the size of his catch, but in the simple act of fishing.
Yeah.
Connecting with nature.
Right.
Finding peace in the rhythm of the sea.
That's beautiful.
What can we learn from his example?
I mean, he's reminding us that happiness isn't always about these like grand achievements or possessions. Right. It's about like appreciating the simple things.
Totally.
It's about gratitude.
Yeah.
And enjoying the process, not just the outcome.
Exactly. And I love the story about the girl whose garden was destroyed in a storm.
Right.
It's heartbreaking at first, but then she starts to see new shoots pushing up through the soil, and she rediscovers joy in that regrowth.
That's powerful.
What struck you about that story?
I think it's a beautiful reminder.
Yeah.
That happiness isn't always about what's happening externally.
Yeah.
It's about our internal response.
Totally.
You know, she could have just focused on the loss.
Right.
But instead, she saw the beauty of renewal and hope in nature's resilience.
It shows the power of perspective, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And it reminds us that even when things are tough, there's always an opportunity to find beauty and meaning in those moments.
That's a good point.
And this brings us to that point of, like, cultivating an observant mind, which I think is a skill that allows us to unlock those unexpected sources of happiness in the ordinary parts of life.
Yeah.
It's about consciously noticing the beauty around us and how that can just bring sparks of joy.
Yeah. What comes to mind for you?
I mean, it could be as simple as like the way sunlight filters through the leaves.
Yeah. I love this.
Or the sound of birdsong. Or even, like, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee.
Yes.
It's about being present.
Right.
And taking the time to appreciate those small details.
It's those small details that make the big difference.
Exactly. And the source brings this to life with stories like The Poet.
Oh, yeah.
Who finds inspiration in watching a little bird.
Yeah. It's something we often overlook.
Totally.
But he turns it into something so beautiful.
Yeah. And then there's a story about a businessman.
Okay.
He's so consumed by his life, right?
Yeah.
Always busy and going.
Yeah.
But he pauses to savor the aroma of his morning coffee.
That's nice.
And just that simple act of mindfulness, of being fully present in that moment, becomes a source of peace.
Right.
Amidst his chaotic schedule.
It shows the importance of those pauses.
Yeah.
Even if they're just for a minute or two.
Right.
Breaking free from that autopilot.
Totally.
And choosing to enjoy those small moments.
Totally.
Of beauty and pleasure.
These stories really highlight the challenge of finding peace in our crazy, busy world.
It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle.
So easy.
And forget to appreciate the simple things.
Yeah, that's why the source emphasizes creating those moments of stillness and reflection.
Right.
They're so important.
Yes.
And it's not something that just happens. It's something we have to, like, cultivate.
Yeah.
And it uses this really great image of a desert traveler stumbling upon a hidden oasis.
Oh, wow.
That's, like, such a powerful image.
Really?
Because it suggests that those moments of peace and rejuvenation are available to us even amidst all the craziness.
Right.
If we just take the time to look for them.
I love that.
And that leads us to the power of nature as a pathway to happiness.
I mean, that's something I definitely resonate with.
Yeah, me too.
Spending time in nature just makes me feel better no matter what. Like whether it's a walk in the park or gardening.
Yeah.
Or just watching the clouds.
I love that.
It just helps me to find peace.
Yeah.
And joy.
Totally.
And a sense of connection.
And it tells the story of an anthropologist who goes to this remote village, and he's just struck by how content the people are.
Oh, wow.
Their lives are simple, closely tied to nature,
right?
And they find so much joy in their daily routines.
That's interesting.
And their connection to the land.
I mean, it really challenges our ideas.
Right.
of what makes a happy life.
Totally. Because we think we need all this stuff.
Yeah, all the complexities.
Then maybe it's much simpler.
Maybe it's about connection and purpose.
In meaning.
Yeah, exactly.
Their story is such a great example of how being present and appreciating the simple things can have such a profound impact.
Totally.
On our well-being.
I think it reminds us, too, that happiness isn't always about chasing after something. It can be about finding contentment with what we already have.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that brings us to this idea of living in the present moment, letting go of anxieties about the future, and just embracing the beauty of now. It's about shifting our attention from what we lack, what we have, and savoring those moments of joy and connection.
It's so easy to get caught up in what we don't have.
Totally.
And forget to appreciate what we do have.
Yeah, and the source uses this really cool story of a young Zen master who's learning about mindful walking.
Oh, wow.
So, like, every step he takes is deliberate.
Interesting.
And every sensation is noticed. Yeah. And walking becomes a meditation.
It's about bringing that awareness to everyday life.
Yeah.
And finding joy in those ordinary activities.
And that leads us to the idea of creating our own happiness moments.
Oh, I like that.
Like dedicated time each day.
For activities that bring us joy and peace. Remember Leah?
Yeah.
She carves out time.
Yeah.
For things like reading.
Yeah.
Listening to music. Or hanging out with her friends.
She makes time for things that bring her joy.
Yeah.
I love that.
You know, these ordinary activities become rituals of self-care and happiness.
Her example shows the importance of prioritizing our own well-being.
Totally.
We have the power to shape our experience of happiness.
Yeah.
We don't just have to wait for it to find us.
And it brings up this idea of respecting diverse paths to happiness. The source uses this analogy of musical taste.
Oh, that's good.
Just as people have different musical preferences.
Yeah.
They have different sources of happiness.
Right. Some people love classical, others love rock, others are into jazz.
It's not about saying one is better than the other.
Right, exactly.
It's just recognizing that we have different tastes.
When it comes to happiness,
there's no hierarchy.
Right. Judging someone else's source of happiness is like saying their musical taste is wrong.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense.
We should respect that what brings joy to one person might not resonate with another.
Totally.
It's okay if we have different preferences.
And that brings up this question of like, how do we navigate those differences?
Yeah, for sure.
Do we just like stay in our own lanes?
Right.
Enjoying our personal playlists without engaging with others?
I mean, the source offers a few different approaches.
Okay.
One is to practice active listening and empathy.
Totally.
Really trying to understand where someone else's joy is coming from.
Yeah.
Even if it's not something we personally get.
Yeah.
It's about honoring their experience.
Right.
Without needing to change it. Or impose our own preferences.
Exactly. Another approach is to try to see like their happiness as connected to our own. So when we celebrate the joy in other people's lives, it can actually enrich our own sense of happiness.
Almost like expanding our own playlist.
I like that.
By being open to new genres.
Right.
And appreciating different melodies.
And the source also encourages us to stay open-minded about different paths.
Yeah.
Even being willing to try new things. That others find joyful. Just like Aaliyah did with painting.
That's a great reminder.
Yeah.
To stay curious. And adventurous.
Totally.
To step outside our comfort zone. And see what brings us joy.
And sometimes it's in those unexpected places.
Yeah, but let's be real. All this exploring can be kind of overwhelming.
Super overwhelming.
Right.
Yeah.
It's easy to get lost.
Yeah.
Like, what is it that truly makes us happy?
Totally. So how do we avoid that?
Well, the source emphasizes staying grounded in our own values and needs. It's not about just, like, trying everything, but being really intentional and making choices that align with our authentic selves.
It's like finding that balance between being open to new things, but also staying true to ourselves.
Exactly.
And that brings up the question of how do we do that?
How do we stay true to ourselves on this journey?
In this exploration of happiness.
The source suggests that self-awareness is key.
Okay.
Like, We should regularly reflect on what truly brings us joy and be honest with ourselves about what doesn't.
Totally.
It's about paying attention to how different activities make us feel. Do we feel energized?
Right.
Or drained?
Totally.
Happy?
Yeah.
Or sad?
It's about, like, noticing those subtle cues from our body and our mind.
It's like differentiating between fleeting pleasures and those things that nourish our deeper well-being.
Yeah.
True happiness is often found in those activities that align with our values and passions.
Totally.
So
I mean, it all comes back to that idea of to thine own self be true.
Right. Exactly.
Finding lasting happiness means being honest about who we are and what matters.
That's a great point.
And I think this sets us up perfectly to move into the next part of our deep dive,
Sounds good.
where we're going to explore some more practical strategies
Decided.
for cultivating a life that's truly rich in happiness.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, listeners.
Yes.
We'll be right back. Right. You know, as we continue this deep dive into happiness, I'm really struck by this idea that there might not be like one single universal definition of happiness. It's almost like everyone has their own personal happiness playlist.
Yeah.
With different genres and artists.
That appeal to different tastes.
Yeah.
It's a great analogy.
What do you think?
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And the source tackles this head on.
Okay.
Like, it actually prompts you to consider whether a universal definition is even possible.
Okay.
You know, it presents this thought experiment with three individuals who all find happiness in very different ways.
Okay, so like, what are those?
One finds it in, like, savoring delicious food.
Okay.
Another in helping others.
Yeah.
And the third finds it in quiet contemplation during a sunset.
So, like, such diverse experiences.
Totally.
But they all lead to that feeling of happiness. It really challenges us to think beyond, like, those simple definitions.
It's not just, like, one thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then the source asks this really crucial question.
Okay.
It says, is there a common thread that connects these seemingly different experiences?
That's such a good question.
It is, right?
Yeah.
It makes you think.
It makes me think about how maybe it's not so much about the specific activity itself, but more about how it makes us feel.
Internally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, maybe it's more about our state of mind than the external things we're doing to get there.
The source material actually explores whether happiness might be more tied to, like, our mindset. Or our inner state. Rather than external factors.
Interesting.
Or actions.
This reminds me of all those stories we were talking about before.
Yeah.
The desert traveler finding solace in the night sky. The explorers bonding amidst hardship.
Right.
The fisherman content.
It's just the act of fishing.
It wasn't about their circumstances. It was their inner response to them.
Their mindset played a crucial role.
Yeah.
In shaping their experience of happiness.
And that leads to an even deeper question.
Okay.
That the source asks.
It says, if happiness can't be universally defined, what does that mean for us as individuals seeking it?
So is it like a futile quest then?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Should we just give up?
No, not at all.
Right.
The source material gives us some options to consider.
Okay.
One option is that happiness is entirely subjective.
Okay.
A unique and personal experience with no need for a universal definition.
So, like, to each their own.
Exactly.
Live and let live.
Live and let live when it comes to happiness.
Okay.
Another option is that the essence of happiness is in our mindset.
Okay.
Not in the specific actions or our environment.
So it's more about cultivating like an inner state of joy and contentment rather than chasing external things.
Totally.
And then a third option is that maybe we shouldn't get bogged down in trying to define it at all.
Yeah.
But simply savor those moments.
That's a good point.
When we feel it.
I think that really resonates with me.
Yeah, me too.
Sometimes overthinking it just takes the joy out of it.
Yeah.
You know?
But what about for those people who are like craving a little more structure?
Right.
Is there any possibility of finding some common characteristics that could help us understand it better?
Well, the source acknowledges that desire.
Okay.
Like, for a framework.
Yeah.
It offers the possibility that even though happiness can take so many different forms.
Yeah.
There might be like shared features or underlying principles that we can identify.
So maybe it's not about like a rigid definition, but more about recognizing patterns or qualities that contribute to that sense of well-being.
It's about staying curious.
Yeah.
Keep exploring.
Right.
Find what works for you.
Yeah.
And be open to how other people experience it, because it might be different.
And that makes me think about the potential for conflict.
Right.
Or misunderstanding when people have such different ideas about what happiness means.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
The source actually brings this up.
Okay.
It dives into how we can navigate these differences with respect and sensitivity.
Totally.
You know, it gives an example of someone who finds joy in reading.
Yeah.
But someone else finds it tedious.
It would be so easy to be like, well, you're just doing it wrong.
Yeah. You just don't get it.
Yeah.
But the source challenges us to think about it differently.
Okay.
It says that just as people have different musical preferences, they have different tastes when it comes to happiness.
Yeah, I love that analogy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like judging someone's source of happiness is like saying their musical taste is wrong.
It's so true.
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense at all.
We should respect that what brings joy to one person might not work for another.
Totally. That's okay.
So then how do we navigate those differences?
Well, the source gives us a few ideas.
Okay.
One is to practice active listening and empathy. You know, really trying to understand where that other person's joy is coming from.
Totally.
Even if we don't get it.
Yeah.
It's about honoring their experience without needing to change it.
Right.
Or impose our preferences.
Another approach is to try to see their happiness as connected to our own.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah. So like when we celebrate the joy in their lives, it actually can enrich our own sense of happiness.
Almost like we're expanding our own playlist.
Yeah.
By being open to new genres.
And appreciating different melodies.
Exactly.
And the source also encourages us to stay open-minded about different paths.
Totally. To be willing to try new things.
Yeah.
That other people find joyful. Just like Aaliyah did with painting.
I like that.
But, you know, the source also acknowledges that all this exploration can be overwhelming.
It can be.
Right. You can get lost.
Yeah.
And feel unsure
of
what truly brings lasting happiness.
It's like being in a music store.
Yeah.
With endless aisles of CDs.
Yeah.
Not knowing where to start.
Yeah. How do we avoid that?
Well, that's where the source emphasizes.
Okay.
The importance of staying grounded. In our own values and needs.
Okay.
It's not about trying everything.
Right.
But being selective. And making choices that align with our authentic selves.
It's about finding that balance again. Of being open to new experiences, but also staying true to who we are.
This brings up another question.
Okay.
How do we stay true to ourselves?
Yeah. How do we do that?
On this journey.
On this journey to discover happiness.
Yeah. Well, the source material says self-awareness is key.
Okay.
We should be reflecting regularly. Like what brings me joy? What drains my energy? What makes me feel alive?
It's like taking inventory of our happiness toolkit.
Yeah, exactly.
And figuring out what works best for us.
Another suggestion is to set boundaries.
Okay.
You know, make conscious choices about what we do and don't do. We don't have to try everything or feel pressure
to conform to external expectations.
It's okay to say no to things that don't feel right.
Totally.
Even if they're popular.
Right. It's about prioritizing.
Yes.
Those things that nourish our soul.
Exactly.
This makes me think about the importance of surrounding ourselves with people who support us.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a great point.
People who encourage us to be our true selves.
The source doesn't explicitly say this.
Okay.
But I think it's implied.
Yeah.
Having those supportive relationships is so valuable.
I think this has been such a rich conversation.
Me too.
We've talked about the challenges of defining happiness.
Right.
The importance of respecting different paths.
Right.
And the power of staying true to ourselves. What other takeaways resonate with you?
I think what really stands out to me is the emphasis on the ongoing nature of this quest for happiness.
Right.
It's not about reaching some endpoint.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a mindset and a way of life that allows us to experience joy and contentment even when things are tough.
It's about embracing the journey with all the ups and downs and finding those little happinesses that sustain us.
And remembering that happiness isn't passive.
No.
It's something we actively cultivate through our choices, our actions, our engagement with the world.
This leads to a final question before we wrap up this part.
Yeah.
How do we cultivate a life that's truly rich in happiness?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right?
It is.
Philosophers have been asking that for centuries.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty of it is that the answer isn't a formula.
Okay.
It's an ongoing exploration.
It's a journey of self-discovery, a dance between inner awareness and outer engagement.
Right, a commitment to creating a life that feels aligned with our values, our passions, our desires.
And in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to explore those strategies and practices that can help us cultivate that life.
Awesome.
So stay with us.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive.
It's all about happiness.
Exactly. And in this last part, we're going to be talking about like how we can actually put this into practice.
Right.
How can we cultivate more happiness in our lives?
I think it's that we've been studying the map of happiness. And now we get to actually go on the journey.
I love that analogy.
And we've got all the tools and knowledge to navigate the terrain.
Totally. So like, where do we even begin?
Well, the source material gives us some really practical advice.
Okay.
One of the key strategies is to actively cultivate moments of peace and stillness.
In our daily lives.
It's about creating those pockets of calm.
Yeah.
You know, amidst all the business.
I can already hear our listeners being like, easier said than done.
Yeah.
Like, life is so hectic.
It is.
How do we actually do that?
That's where the source material, it's really specific.
Okay, I like it.
It recommends practices.
Yeah.
Like deep breathing or meditation.
Okay.
Even just a few minutes can make a difference.
I've tried meditation before, and I gotta admit, it can be tough.
It can be.
To quiet the mind.
Especially at first.
Yeah. Do you have any tips?
Yeah, the source emphasizes that it's not about, like, achieving perfect stillness. Or emptying your mind. Completely.
It's not about that.
It's more about just creating space to observe, noticing our thoughts without judgment.
It's like creating a mental sanctuary.
Yeah, exactly.
Where we can just be
present with ourselves.
Yeah, not needing to fix anything.
Right.
I like that. That feels much more approachable.
It's not about striving for some perfect state of bliss.
It's more about that gentle awareness.
Yeah, exactly.
What other strategies?
Another practice is to cultivate gratitude.
Okay, gratitude.
This could be keeping a journal. Writing down things you're grateful for. Or just taking a moment each day. To reflect on the good things.
I've heard so much about gratitude.
Yeah, it's a popular topic these days.
But I gotta be honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels a little forced.
Right.
Like, how do we make it feel more authentic?
The source encourages us to focus on the small things. Those everyday moments. That bring us joy. It doesn't have to be. These grand, sweeping statements.
Totally. So, like, what are some examples?
Maybe it's the taste of your coffee.
Okay.
Beautiful sunset. A kind gesture from a stranger. A moment of laughter. With someone you love.
It's those little things that can really make a difference.
They can. When we take the time to notice them.
It's like we're training our brains.
Totally.
To focus on the good.
Instead of getting bogged down by the negative.
Totally.
And you know, it's amazing how these small acts of gratitude can actually impact our well-being.
In what way?
They can reduce stress. Boost our mood. Improve our relationships.
So we've got mindfulness. We've got gratitude. What else can we add to that toolkit?
The source material also talks about engaging in activities that bring us joy and that align with our values and passions.
It's about doing those things that make our hearts sing. Things that make us feel alive.
Right. And it's not about being selfish. When we take care of ourselves. we actually have more to give to others.
It's like filling up our own cup.
Yes. I love that.
So we can pour into others.
Without depleting ourselves.
And that brings us back to setting boundaries.
So important. It can be hard to say no.
Essential for protecting those happiness moments.
Totally. The source reminds us that we have a right to choose how we spend our time.
Absolutely.
And to prioritize those things that nourish us.
It's not about being rude, but it's about being assertive.
Yeah, and setting healthy boundaries.
And sometimes finding happiness requires us to step outside of our comfort zones.
Try new things.
Like Aaliyah did with painting.
Right, exactly.
It's a good reminder that happiness can be found in unexpected places.
You can.
If we're open
to exploring.
Yeah, we might discover a hidden talent, a new passion.
Or just a fun way to spend an afternoon.
Totally. And I think this brings up the importance of lifelong learning.
I love that.
Staying curious.
Yeah.
Staying engaged with the world.
It keeps things interesting.
Yeah.
It keeps us feeling alive.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some final thoughts?
Yeah. What are some key takeaways
that have resonated with you?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that happiness is a choice.
It's not passive.
No, it's active.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a mindset, adopting practices, making choices
that nourish our well-being.
It doesn't just happen to us.
Yeah.
We have to make it happen.
We have more control
than we realize.
And it's about remembering that the journey is just as important as the destination.
Right.
Happiness isn't this far-off goal.
Right.
It's available to us now.
In every moment.
If we choose to see it.
It's about finding those little sparks of joy.
Yes.
And savoring the beauty.
Thank you for joining us.
On this deep dive.
Into happiness.
We hope you found some valuable insights.
And practical tools.
To bring more joy into your life.
Remember.
The pursuit of happiness.
Is an ongoing adventure.
Stay curious.
Stay open.
Keep exploring.
And you have the power.
To create a life that's full of happiness. And purpose.